learning objective we are going to cover today, calculate direct and inverse proportion. All right. So before that, before we start talking about proportion, we will see or we will differentiate between ratio and proportion. All right. So, and then we will start solving some questions. So first, you can say agenda or first outcome is that you should be able to differentiate between ratio and proportion. So topic today is proportion. So this is very important and easy topic as compared to algebra, because proportion may the calculations are very easy, and if you got the concept that how to solve questions related to proportion, so then actually they are very easy, right? Or secondly, proportion is the topic which will be coming in the final exam as well as in the mid-year exam. So this is important in this way also. Okay, it will be there in both of the papers. Okay. So first of all, we need to see what is a ratio. You are familiar with this word ratio and rate. So I want to ask you, okay, if any one of you can recall that what is ratio. Ji Ashman.
Ratio is the comparison of two or more things.
That's right. Ratio is comparison of two or more. Yes, there can be more than two also. Two or
Similar.
more quantities.
Similar.
So then what is rate? Then what is
Comparison of
rate?
two similar quantities. Two or more similar
Rate.
quantities.
So is that the
Ratio.
Hashim, is that definition of rate or ratio?
Ratio.
All right. So then what is the definition of uh, rate? So then what
Rate
is
is
the
the
definition?
same ratio, but it does not use similar quantities.
All right. So there are two words we are using. One is quantities, other is similar. So quantities are basically, it's a term used when we use concept of rate, ratio or proportion. Quantities is basically like any measurements, okay, anything you are comparing, okay. So it can be measurements, it can be numbers, it can be, let's say, units. So it can be anything like the things you are comparing, okay. So similar means that those quantities which can be represented in a same unit. If the quantities can be represented by same unit, then they are called similar quantities, right? If the quantities cannot be represented by same unit, so then they are called different quantities, right? So now, keeping in mind the definition of ratio, that ratio is comparison of two or more quantities. So proportion is basically, the definition is coming from ratio. Proportion is basically the comparison of two ratios, comparison of two or more. Okay, so two or more ratios. Okay, so now for example, if the ratio is A ratio B, okay, so this is a ratio, we are comparing two quantities. Okay, we all agree that this was the ratio we have learned in the previous classes, A ratio B. So now the proportion is not having its own definition, but proportion is basically comparison of two or more ratios. So we will write it down like this, okay, A ratio B is proportion to, this is the symbol for proportion. Ratio is denoted by by a colon. So proportion is denoted by a double colon. So how we are going to read it? We are going to read it like this, okay, A ratio B is proportion to C ratio D. ठीक है? Or in the division form, we can write it down like this: A by B is equal to C by D. ठीक है? So now you can see the definition is fulfilled. Comparison of two or more ratios. So this is the comparison you are doing using equal sign, and these are the two ratios which are compared. So bete, is the difference between the ratio and proportion clear? Any question up till now?
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am.
Okay. So in short, ratio is basically comparison of two or more quantities, and proportion is comparison of two or more ratios. Okay. So that is how to talk about direct and inverse proportion. That is the learning outcome today. So proportion is of two types. One is called direct proportion, and one is called inverse proportion. Right? So I hope all of you can see the screen. Can you see the screen, bete?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So there are two types of proportion. One is called direct proportion, other is called inverse proportion. Direct proportion is if one quantity increase, other also increases. Second quantity is also increasing. While we are comparing the two quantities, if one quantity is increasing, second quantity is also increasing. So in the definition, I'm adding a word here to have you a better idea of proportion. Okay, what proportion is? That word is comparison of two or more. I'm adding a word here. Let me change the color. So I'm adding this word two or more equivalent ratios. Two or more equivalent ratios. What does that mean, equivalent ratios? So it means that if A by B is one instance of a ratio, so then C by D is also basically the instance of the same comparison. Like for example, if I'm comparing, let's say, people with number of days required to complete a task. Okay, so then C and D are also basically comparison of number of people and number of days. Okay, just the link between these two is that these two are equivalent ratios of each other. Okay, so direct proportion, now we will come to direct proportion. Direct proportion is when one quantity increases, other also increases. Inverse proportion is if one quantity increases, the other decreases. That is why it is called the inverse proportion. Okay? So you need to remember proportion is comparison of two or more equivalent ratios, right? So direct proportion is
Meaning of
if
equivalent.
one quantity equivalent is like in the fraction G, like 1 by 2 is equivalent to 2 by 4. ठीक है, equivalent ratios, equivalent fractions आपने पढ़ी हुई है ना, कि if you equivalent, इसकी definition ये होती है that numbers are different, you know, but the meaning is same. If 1 by 2 we see 1 by 2 is half. If we see 2 by 4, actually 2 by 4 is still half of anything. ऐसे ही है ना, just the number of you can say parts are more. So the definition of equivalent is basically the numbers apparently might be different, but the meaning of those two fractions are same. Okay? So one fraction can have many unlimited, you know, equivalent fractions. Multiply this fraction with any of the number, so you will get a new equivalent fraction. So ratio is also a fraction. That's why we are using this terminology here as well. So proportion is comparison of two or more equivalent ratios, right? So then the two types of proportions are, one is called direct proportion and one is called inverse proportion. Direct proportion is when one quantity increases, second is also increasing. Inverse proportion is when one quantity increases, second quantity decreases, right? So we will talk about few examples and then you will have an idea, okay, what does that mean, direct proportion or inverse proportion. So we will talk about some real life examples, right? So if I take some real life examples of direct proportion and inverse proportion. So let me give you a few examples and then I hope you will be able to add more into these examples. For example, if one quantity is, let's say, number of tea bags, and the other quantity is number of cups. So if these two quantities are compared, so if the number of tea bags are more, so you can make more number of teacups. If the number of tea bags are less, so then the less number of teacups will be prepared. Okay? So this is one example of direct proportion. One quantity increases, the other will also be increasing. You need to remember this point that when we use proportion, so apart from the two quantities which are in consideration, everything is considered, everything else is considered a constant value. Like you cannot think like this, oh, ma'am is giving an example, number of tea bags, if there will be more number of teacups can be prepared, but what about if we are having less sugar? So you need to remember this, when we are comparing proportion, when we are comparing quantities by proportion, the assumption is that everything else is a constant, is same. All right. So you cannot think like this. What about the other quantities? What about milk we are adding, or what about sugar we are adding in the tea? So they can also be less or more. So we will not talk about the ones we are not considering in the question. So this is the assumption in the proportion questions. The only quantities which are compared, they are the variables in the scenario. All right. So one example of inverse proportion is, for example, speed of car with a with time, let's say, right? So speed is more, then it will take less time to reach till the destination. If the speed of the car is less, then it will take more time to reach till the destination. So speed and time are basically inverse proportion. If speed is more, it will be less time will be taken to cover the distance. Okay? If speed is less, so more time will be taken to cover the that distance. Now in this question, as I told you earlier, what are the constants? Constants are, you should not be thinking about, okay, what about these values? What will happen to them? So we are considering distance as a constant in both cases. We are considering the same road, same car maybe. You cannot say one is Mehran and another is, for example, um, what else?
Lamborghini.
Boys can tell a better Lamborghini. So how can they be compared using this, you know? So even if the speed of Maran is more, you know, the performance cannot be better than Lamborghini, for example. So this is the assumption in the proportion questions, that apart from the two quantities we are taking for comparison, all the other things are constant. So you cannot say, oh, there might be a bumpy road for one car, another car is basically going on a motorway, for example. So, you know, then we cannot have this comparison like this, because speed and time are inversely proportional. So You need to remember this. Okay, apart from the two things we are comparing in the question, the rest of all the things are considered a constant. Okay? So when we are comparing speed and time, so definitely we are assuming that the same car we are talking about the same distance, same road, same petrol or diesel the car is taking, So rest of all the things are constant, right? So can anyone think of more examples where the two quantities are compared by direct proportion or inverse proportion? Please raise your hand for the answer. Can you think of more examples where the two quantities are compared? जी तवस्सल जी बेटे. So bete, when you are raising hand, please answer the questions quickly. So anyone else,
Ma'am.
can you think of more? जी जी.
Yes, ma'am.
So do you want to give one example?
Yes, ma'am. Of the first one.
First one, direct
Direct
proportion. जी
proportion.
बेटे. जी.
Ma'am,
जी बेटे.
number of bikes to number of cars.
Number of bikes, number of cars cannot be, or bikes or cars cannot be compared by anything, na? So we can say number of cars with the cost. Okay? So the more the cars, the more the cost would be. If you are buying one car, so the cost is less. If you are buying more cars, so then the cost would be more. Okay? That is an
What
example
would be
of
ma'am?
direct proportion. Okay? More cars,
Yes, ma'am.
more money required. Less number of cars, less money required. Okay? So this is one example of direct proportion. So anyone else? Any real life example of direct and inverse proportion? Anyone else? Bete, please unmute your mics, raise your hand, unmute your mic, and please answer. Anyone from girls or boys? Any other example? Well done, Tawassul, for taking a start. Anyone else? Any real life examples around you where you can think of two quantities? Ji, the theer.
Ma'am, I have an example of inverse proportion.
All right.
Um,
Ji, bete.
for example, like if there are like workers working on the construction site, the more there are the workers, the less time it will take.
Excellent. So workers, number of workers with number of days, for example. Excellent. So the more the workers, the lesser time required, or the less number of days required to complete the work. If the number of workers are less, then you need more days to complete the same task. Gee, Arshman.
I have an example of direct proportion.
Gee, bete.
For example, we are working somewhere, and the more we work, the more we get paid.
That's right. So more, let's say, working hours. Okay? More working hours, so more pay. Okay? Less working hour, less pay. So actually, working hours are compared with pay. More working hours, more pay. Less working hours, less pay. That's excellent. Ji Hashim.
Ma'am, more the pressure, less the area.
More the pressure,
Less the area.
less the
Area. Area.
area. Area.
Yes.
All right. So you are taking this example from science, I believe. Pressure and area are inversely proportional. Very good. So if pressure is more, definitely the area covered by that object will be less. You can take example of gases. So when the pressure is more, the gas can be, contained in the cylinder as well. Okay? If the pressure is less, so then that gas can occupy the whole room. Okay? So very good example. Pressure and area are inversely proportional. Anybody else? So have you got the concept? Okay, the two terms, two quantities are inversely proportional, because in the paper, this question comes in the paper. For example, it would be 4 marks question, and the quantities are given from the real life, and they will ask you, okay, is it direct proportion or inverse proportion? So basically, those are free 4 marks, but still students make mistake because the examples they take, they are sometimes, you can say somehow confusing examples. So for example, I remember from the last year that there was example of number of tiles and the floor, number of tiles and floor made with those tiles. So what do you think is what kind of proportion is this? Number of tiles and the floor that is made.
Inverse.
So
Inverse
inverse,
proportion.
why inverse? So number of floor, matlab, sorry, I have written the other floor. So number of tiles and the floor that can be made out of those tiles. So what kind of proportion is this? Number of tiles and the floor you can make with
It
those
is
tiles.
direct proportion.
Which proportion?
Direct proportion.
Direct proportion, that's right. So more the number of tiles, you can make more floor, okay, during the work. So that is how they are related. So can anyone tell me, please raise your hand for the answer, what kind of relation is speed and distance? What kind of relation they are both having? Speed and distance.
Inverse.
Speed and distance. Please raise your hand for the answer. Speed and distance. जी बेटे. Hisham.
M inverse proportion.
Why inverse? Because it is written in the inverse side. That's why you need to think speed and distance. G, the Theer, you were raising the hand. The Theer.
Ma'am, it's
Speed
direct
and
proportion.
distance. It is direct proportion. The more the speed, the more distance will be covered. If the speed is less, then the less distance will be covered. Okay? So keeping the all other quantities constant. So we are taking time as a constant. So for example, if the time is 5 minutes, so the car with more speed will cover more distance, and the car with lesser speed will cover less distance. Okay? So these are the few examples you need to remember. So all kind of shopping examples come in direct proportion. For example, how many pizzas you can buy, money and pizza. So the more number of pizzas, the more money required. Less numbers of pizza, less money required. Same as the number of tea bags and cups. Okay? So now we are going to start few questions. But before that, we can start the questions from the worksheet. I will tell you how you're going to solve proportion questions. So when you will solve proportion questions with the method I will specify, you will never make mistake in that. Okay? So we will follow the steps we will follow the same, you can say, method in all the questions of proportion. So please learn this method well, use it while solving the question so that you are not making mistake in these simple questions. So we are going to start with question number 1. So question number 1 is that you need to, let's read the question first. The distance covered by a car is directly proportional to the time taken. If the car covers a distance of 200 kilometers in 4 hours, how long take to cover a distance of 500 kilometers? So if even if it is direct proportion or it is inverse proportion, we will use the same method. We will never use unitary method. ये आपने बात याद रखनी है. Unitary method में students make mistake because unitary method can be applied on direct proportion questions, but on the inverse proportion questions, unitary method cannot be applied. ठीक है? So that's why we will not use unitary method in this topic. Rather, we will follow the method I'm going to explain right now. ठीक है? So first of all, while solving proportion question, you need to see which two quantities are compared. So can anyone tell me in this first question, what are the two quantities compared? Yes, Waleed.
Kilometer and hours.
So basically distance and time. Okay, so we are comparing distance and time in this question. Very good, Waleed. So now we will write down the data which is given to you in the question. 200 kilometer in 4 hours, 200 kilometer in 4 hour. 200 kilometer in 4 hour. So now this is the first ratio. Okay, now we will write down the equivalent of this ratio. Now they're asking how long. So the unknown is time. So I will write a variable here, x. Will it take to cover a distance of 500 kilometer? So what I have done in the first step, I have seen what are the two quantities compared in the question. Then we will write down the data given like this. Whatever is the unknown, put variable in that space. Okay, like time was the unknown, so we have placed x there. Okay, so now this is first step. Okay, so we will perform this question in 3 steps. Step 1 is basically writing the data. Okay, so you need to write down the data in this form, in the form of ratios. So now you will see what kind of relation distance and time is having. Are they having direct proportion or they are having inverse proportion? So I'm starting step 2. Step 2 is identify type of proportion type. Okay, if it is direct proportion or inverse proportion. So can anyone tell me what kind of relation distance and time is having? What kind of relation distance and time is having? Ji beta Waleed. It is given in the question as well, it is direct proportion. Okay, so now if it is direct proportion, put the both arrows in the same direction like this. I am changing the color for the second step so that you know what is the second step. So second step is identify the proportion type and use arrows. If it is direct proportion, the both arrows are in the same direction. If it is inverse proportion, then we will put the arrows in the opposite direction. Okay, so now we are going to do step 3. I'm changing the color again so that you can see what is step 3. So step 3 is make equation. Make equation and solve. Okay, these are the 3 steps we will follow to solve proportion question. Now we will make the equation. So we will follow the direction of arrow. So this is x by 4 equal to 500 by 200. Any question till this point? Third step is making of equation. So how we are going to make equation? We will follow the direction of the arrow, which we have placed in the second step. X by 4, 500 by 200. Any question anybody is having?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so I hope these steps are clear. So now how can we find out X from this equation? What to do?
Cross multiply.
Cross multiplication.
Excellent. Cross multiply. Very good. Cross multiplication. So 200x is equal to 500 into 4. Okay? X is equal
20,000.
to 500 into 4 divided by 200. I'm not multiplying it because I want, there is a slogan in fraction K, divide, simplify before multiplication. You need to remember this rule. that simplify before multiplication. I will not multiply unless I will not simplify. Okay? So I can cancel these two zeros. This 2 will be cancelled with this 4. So the answer is 10. 10, and what is the unit of x? 10
Kilometer.
hours.
Or.
Hours.
G, 10 hours. So is it making sense? Like, is this question clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Three steps to follow. First step is writing the data in form of ratio. Okay, so represented by green color. Okay, second step is represented by this orange color. It's a very small step that just identify the proportion type. If it is direct proportion, both arrows will go in one direction. If it is inverse proportion, then one arrow will go up, other will go down. Okay, it does not matter which arrow is going up and which is going down. Okay, so then form the equation. So how you're going to form the equation? You will follow the direction of arrows. X by 4, 500 by 200. अगर ये inverse proportion होता तो फिर मैं x by 4 is equal to 200 by 500 लिखती. Like one arrow is going up, other is coming down. So we will follow the fraction in the same way. ठीक है? So then we will simply cross multiply and we will find out the answer. ठीक है बेटे? So now let's solve the second question. Question is, a factory can produce 60 units of a product in 4 hours. So please raise your hand for the first step. What are the two quantities compared? So this time not Waleed, anybody else? Arshman ji beta.
And the units of product and the time.
Number of units and the time. Okay, so now we are going to write down the data. 60 units are produced in 4 hours. We need to find out how many units will be produced in 8 hours. So this time we need to find units. So X will be written here and time is 8 hours. Okay, so now we will go to the second step. So Hashim has raised the hand. Hashim, what kind of proportion is this? Number of units and time. Number of units and time.
Correct.
Direct proportion. The more the number of units, the more time required in which factory can produce those units. If the number of units are less, so less time is required to produce the unit. Now we will do step 3. So who will help me in writing the equation? So anyone who can help me in writing the equation. Ji Waleed.
Ma'am, X by 60.
X is equal
Is equal to 8 by 4.
8 by 4. Excellent. So now we will cross multiply. So this will be 4x is equal to 60 multiplied by 8. Okay, do not multiply at this step. These are the simple calculations, but when you will go ahead, there might be difficult calculations as well. So x is equal to 60 into 8 divided by 4. You can cancel this 4 and your answer is 120. So what will be the unit? It is units. So that makes sense. If 60 units are produced in 4 hours, then 120 units would be produced in 8 hours. So that is a sensible answer. ठीक है बेटे, any question in question number 2?
मैम ये 60
No,
by
ma'am.
x नहीं होना चाहिए था, 60 by x.
Sorry?
मैम वो जो नंबर ऑफ यूनिट है, जब हमने इनको फ्रैक्शन में लिखा है तो आपने x by 60 को लिखा है. 60
बेटे,
by
I'm
x नहीं लिखना
following the
चाहिए था.
direction. I'm following the direction of this arrow. X by 60, 8 by 4. You can write down 60 by x as well. अगर आप 60 by x करेंगे ना तो then ये this will also be written as 4 by 8. ये बात समझ आ रही है?
Yes, ma'am.
Just go in the one direction. अगर आप 60 by x लिखेंगे तो फिर आपने यहाँ भी 4/8 लिखना होगा, because if you are taking the first line on the top, तो दूसरी तरफ भी the value of first line will come on the top. ठीक है बेटे, बस ये आपने केयरफुल होना है. If you will write down 60/x is equal to 8/4, तो फिर ये डायरेक्ट प्रोपोर्शन नहीं रहेगा, फिर आप ये आपने इसको क्या बना दिया है, इनवर्स प्रोपोर्शन बना दिया है. So you need to be very careful about like how you are putting the arrows and how you are writing the equation. Even if you write x by 60 or 60/x, it does not matter unless you are not writing or you are writing the time also in the same direction. Like if you're writing x by 60, then you need to write 8/4. If you're writing 60/x, then you need to write down 4/8. Is it making sense?
Yes.
Any question anybody else is having? All right. So let's solve one more question so you have an idea how we are going to solve. So this question is, a recipe requires 2 cups of flour to make 12 cookies. How many cups of flour are needed to make 24 cookies? Okay, so what are the two things we are comparing? We are comparing flour and number of cookies. Okay, cups of flour, number of cookies. These are the two quantities compared. So let me use a darker color. So the data now we are going to write. 2 cups of flour makes 12 cookies. Coming here to make 24 cookies. So what kind of proportion is this? What type of proportion is number of cups, flour and cookies? What kind of relation they are having?
Direct.
It is direct proportion. Yes. Direct proportion. If the flour is more number of cookies will be made. So we will use arrows in the same direction. Okay, now we can make the equation. X by 2 is equal to 24/12. Right? If you want to write 2/x, then you will write down is equal to 12/24. Right? So now we will simply cross multiply. It is 12x is equal to 2 multiplied by 24. X is equal to 2 into 24 divided by 12. So your answer would be, if you cancel this
4.
out, so your answer is 4 cups. And that makes sense also. If 2 cups of flour is making 12 cookies, then 4 cups will make 24 cookies. That is a sensible answer. Okay? But never ever use unitary method in these questions, because then you will make mistake. I have seen students taking 90 plus marks in the paper, but they still make mistake in these simple questions because they use unitary method quickly without looking at this point. Direct proportion method we can use unitary method, but inverse proportion may we cannot use unitary method. Okay, so you need to remember, you need to follow the same method which we are using in the class to solve questions. Okay, bete? So we will continue working on the same topic tomorrow as well. Okay, with the same method so that you can learn it better. All right. So with that, we will finish the class today. Thank you for coming. Thank you for joining in. Take care. Zala Hafiz. See you in the next class.
Allah Hafiz, ma'am.
Allah Hafiz, ma'am.
Allah Hafiz, bete. Allah Hafiz.